everyone. Welcome back to my world. It's me, Tammy, and I am got another female filmmaker on my channel today. Her name is Jena Burchik. She is another filmmaker from my grad school, and she is here talking about her film Mom and M. And Jena, I am so excited to have you on my channel today.
I'm so excited to be here, Tammy. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this all week long.
Oh, I'm so glad. So, tell me a little bit about your background before we start talking about your film and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to do the condensed version. I think what's so interesting about people in film is like it's not a linear path.
No.
Everything is like all over the place. But my background is actually in grip and electric, and so I've been a crew member for the last decade, working on big TV shows and films, predominantly in the grip department, so shaping light, creating shadows. But as much as that was super exciting and I still love that work, I've always had a drive and passion towards documentary filmmaking. So when I started at VCFA, I knew that would be my focus as I would shift from, I hate the expression, but below the line to above the line.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pivoted then, and I have made a few short documentaries and docu-narratives, and then for my thesis at VCFA, I made my first feature-length film, which is Mom and M, and that's kind of where my world is now. I'm an assistant professor of film at Towson University, their electronic media and film department, and I am now working on my second feature documentary, and then still doing some gaffing and some grip whenever people call me, just because I still love it.
That's awesome. I know that when I first met you, you were working on House of Cards. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, yes.
What was, that's like, tell me what that was like, just from, you know, we watched it on Netflix. What was it like behind the scenes?
Sure, yeah. So I was what's called your first call day player for 6 years. So every time they went on location or even on the stage, whenever they needed another person in the grip department, I had a very coveted position where I was the first phone call, which I was obsessed with because it let me still continue being a adjunct professor at the time. I was also working at a grip and electric rental house in Baltimore called Serious Grip, and then I could go on this big massive show. And for Baltimore, it was the biggest thing we had going on because we're not New York or LA. We're a smaller, we're a really tight community, and typically we have maybe like 2 to 3 shows at a time. We don't have like 20 shows. You're not walking down a lot in Baltimore, really. So it was massive because I was able to start like 2 years after I graduated undergrad. So I was like 24 years old. I was really green. I had done a lot of corporate and commercial video, but this was big time for me, really huge trucks and big gear. I was the only female in my department for the majority of the time that I was there. There were two other women that I occasionally would work with and would really try to cling towards that mentorship. But for the most part, it was a boys' club that I was part of. And I have to say, for as the things you hear in the film industry, especially in a post Me Too Times Up world, especially being on set the day Kevin Spacey's news broke, I felt really fortunate in my specific department that I had more big brothers looking out for me than I did have like any predatorial experiences. But it was a wild ride. I felt like being on that show, we watched the evolution of like feminism in the film industry because it felt like such an old Hollywood set when I joined. I had all of these mentors that were 20, 30 years more experienced than me, giving me all their stories and raising me up. And then we paused for months when Kevin Spacey's news broke. We didn't know if we were going to have jobs. We didn't know if we were going to come back. And then Robin Wright vouched for everyone and was like, we need to finish this show and we need to finish it our way and change the message of the show. And so it's kind of cool because what you see in terms of the narrative, if you've watched the show, like the way it ends with her and this kind of feeling of, I mean, it's, in my opinion, a bit over the top writing of all of the women that they hired.
Yeah.
That's, but at the time, I guess like it felt like a shock that we kind of jumped on and clung to. It was changing behind the scenes too. So I love that I got to be a part of watching that very necessary evolution and shift take place.
That thank you for bringing that up and talking about that because I always had kind of wondered about that.
Mm,
And that is such an issue that we as female filmmakers in an industry that is dominated by men, it is really hard to kind of get your foot in the door and figure out, okay, what am I doing? And I don't want to have to sacrifice who I am as a person for a career, and I don't want to, all of those sacrifices that women before us have made it possible for us now, I think. So,
absolutely. I mean, like in being a professor too, like I still think it's incredibly difficult for women, marginalized genders, BIPOC folks to like get their foot in the door. But I think that there's just such a vocal conversation that's exciting happening right now about elevating and highlighting those voices and creating safe spaces to where like the concept, the phrase safe space when I started did not exist. I mean, like it was, you heard people on walkie talkie talking about objectifying women and walking down the street. If I had a problem with that, then I needed to leave. I mean, I was in the wrong department then. That stuff's not really happening as much now. And it's wild to me that this is all in a 10-year span. That I like this evolution has taken place, that the role of like an intimacy coordinator is only like 4 years old. It is, I try to like let my female and like minority students know that I'm like, you're part of a revolution. Like this is happening now. This was not happening in like 2010, 2011. And it's, there's a, in the world we have like so far to go, but it feels really great as a mentor to younger students to be a part of this positive change.
that is so exciting. Well, that kind of then leads me into the film that you shot,
Sure.
Mom and M, because that is dealing with transgender issues, the LGBTQ plus um storyline. Tell me how you found this couple and what your experience was filming. How long did you film with them? A little bit about that.
Sure, sure. So for folks out there that have not seen the film, Mom and M is my directorial feature-length debut, and it's an intimate portrait about modern American parenthood, specifically about the Richard family, who I followed in Baltimore. Nikki is a transgender writer, or I would rather say a writer who happens to be transgender, because it does not necessarily define her, but it is a defining factor in who she is. Elise is Nikki's wife and is a social media influencer, and also the person holding down the 9 to 5 in the family as a benefits coordinator for the NFL. And then their adopted daughter, Sansa, they adopted from Hungary, who battles leukemia throughout the film. So together they're navigating what happens when your partner comes out as transgender while you're caring for an ill child. And really just a film about acceptance and love's power in surviving extraordinary circumstances. So for me, what happened was I was a professor, an adjunct at the time, and I had a student who was presenting female that I was teaching lighting for film and television. And I had this student who presenting female was really interested in lighting, and that doesn't happen. So I took them under my wing, and I was so excited to mentor this student. And throughout that semester, I noticed they were struggling with their mental health. And I, being kind of blind to what could be an underlying factor in someone's life, thought it was normal senioritis. This person's graduating and is nervous about entering the world. And then a semester goes by, they've graduated, they're out in the world, we're like lightly keeping in touch. And I start seeing things change on their Facebook feed. Their pronouns change and their name changes. And all of a sudden, I see this new person completely blossom, and all of the like oppressed strife, mental health seems to be kind of shedding away in their new skin, presenting male and identifying as male. And I just thought it was this beautiful, beautiful privilege to get to know this person and witness their discovery and their bravery and coming out and their transition. And also how much I didn't know about the trans community. And so I've always felt like an ally. I have worked for the Human Rights Campaign. I've worked for the ACLU. I was there for like the March on Washington during Prop 8, trying to legalize gay marriage. But I'm a cisgender woman who, up until the last couple of years, largely identified as heterosexual because I didn't understand that pansexual was a thing, which is now what I identify as, even though I'm in a heterosexual marriage. And I felt like I did not know nearly enough to be the type of ally and the type of activist I wanted to be. And what I think is the coolest thing for me personally as a documentarian is that we get to be explorers and that we get an invitation that's access to really steeping ourselves in someone's life where we might not otherwise be able to do that. So originally, this was meant to be a short film about really cool trans folks in the Baltimore arts community. And I was having breakfast with a filmmaker, Lara Guidi, who said, "Hey, have you checked out this person, Elise Richard, on Instagram? She's an influencer and her wife is trans, and they have a really cute kid." So I went on Instagram as a total millennial and was like, let me look at this person and look at their lives. And they were living very public lives because of being an influencer and Nikki being a writer. And I was able to learn quite a lot about them. And I just became enamored with their story and who they were. So I asked Nikki to have like a drink with me. We talked for hours, and I was invited to their living room, to their house with my camera, where I met Sansa and Elise, which is the very opening of the film, as me meeting them through my lens. And I left that day, and I thought, not a discredit to the other trans folks I was filming with, but I could not tell this story, the Richard story, in 2 minutes of a 10-minute short film. They things were happening, and I was like, people have not seen transgender parents enough. People have not seen them in humanized roles. They're always troped, or they're, this like sidekick. And I just said, hey, I don't know what this is. I'm a grad student right now. I want to follow you. I had an incredible role model, Nina Davenport, who said, keep following them. And then this is what it turned into. So
That that's awesome. So when I watched it, I have a child who's trans, and um it has definitely been a struggle for me. Not that I never was not an ally, but all of a sudden when it's your child or something like that, it really forces you to reevaluate who you are as a person and a parent, and that relationship that you have and stuff. And it was heartbreaking when Nikki talked about her relationship with her father, because um for as like as I struggled with my child, he and I struggled with pronouns and stuff, but now it's like, okay, he's my son. He's my munchkin. I love him, you know but I couldn't ever imagine not accepting my kid for who they were, even if it was like whatever issues I had, they were mine, not my kids, and so it was something that I had to work on,
mm,
you know but it I never not loved my kid, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
so
And that just shows such strength and bravery, though, and a testament to like who you are, that you can even say, these were my issues that I needed to work through, and my challenge, it was not my kids. And I think that what happens with a lot of the rejection is that it's looked at like a personal insult, like, you were my daughter and now you're my son, and you've died, I've
right,
lost you, and Elise speaks to that in the film, that's what a lot of their family has basically treated it as. And
right,
it's just, and it's just this, it's not what it is. It's like, no, you're person in your life, your spouse, your kid, your partner, whoever, they're living their truth now, and it is definitely a challenge for everyone around you because you're so I mean, you birthed your child, right? You're so used to what you have nurtured and fostered, but then it really does become your own self work. And I just think that I really respect you for vulnerability and expressing that and saying that.
Oh, well, thanks. It's been a long time coming. It was not an easy process for sure. And it was never, I've had trans friends. That was never the issue, but it was all of a sudden it's like it definitely threw my world upside down.
Mm,
Just because it was like, what? This, I'd always thought, oh, if I had a kid that was gay or something like that, not a big deal.
mhm,
But then it was like, oh, this is something, because I think I live in Utah where very, very conservative, religious. And so even though I consider myself very open-minded, that culture still can get in there and like really mess with your brain. And you're just like, what, you know, how did I fail as a parent? You
mhm.
know, because you hear all of those things in that ether of stuff.
Yeah,
And so anyway, now it's good. I know that he's working through his things, I'm working through my things, but I'm always going to be his mom,
yeah,
whatever journey that he is on. And so I think that was a thing that really bothered me. Um, I grew up LDS Mormon, but I'm really not practicing right now. Because I've struggled with how the church itself has um marginalized that community,
mhm,
just in general, just the entire LGBTQ community. And um and in general, those ultra conservative Christians who are like, you know disowning their children for not uh conforming to whatever image that they think that they should have.
sure.
And what for me, the one thing that I kind of take from growing up is, Jesus Christ is he was like, his first and only command was love one another. And I'm like, if you can't love your kid, then what kind of person are you? So
And
anyway, so that's my little soapbox there. But
no,
anyway,
I mean, like, but I resonate deeply with that though because I think this film's an hour long, but I had over 300 hours of footage,
wow.
and it could have been a very different film where I focused a lot more heavily on religion. I chose not to do that because I wanted this to feel like a year in their lives where you got really a snapshot of who they were during this period. And I didn't want to do like a full, like, this could have been hours long. But because Nikki and Elise both were raised in deep South Southern Baptist church culture, Nikki's father's a minister. They met because of youth group. They met because of church. I mean, the level of struggle and rejection that they experience. And then they move all the way to Baltimore where they don't know anyone. And what they're trained and raised to do is to find another church because the positives are those are the people that you can call that if you're having a hard time can, like, give you a tank of gas or a meal or what have you, and they find that community here. Nikki comes out and then they're rejected here too, and Baltimore is a pretty damn liberal place. And a lot of the churches, like especially around Pride Month, which we're in right now, love to put out their flags for the month. But really, like, the work that needs to be done, I believe so much that religion and my personal views on God is that it's personal experience and personal love. And that's why I included the family praying midway through the film because I just felt like that showed such superhuman strength that they decided, no, this is our relationship with God. So you can kick us out of your community and you can reject us from worshiping with you, but you can't take worshiping away from us, and you can't take our relationship with God away from us. And I talked to Elise specifically at length about this, because she said, about her relationship with God, and she said, when you're rejected like that, it does seem like the most like, and I'm not directly quoting her, but like it does seem most likely that you should just turn your back on some because they turn their back on you. But she said, having a child that's relapsed 3 times, at least in the scale of this film, I wouldn't have made it through without God. And I just think that there's so much beauty and strength there. And also I hope we see a massive shift in church culture and that acceptance that, your relationship with God can be your own, and we shouldn't judge people as much as we do.
Yeah,
But
absolutely, absolutely. Well, then let's talk about their relationship with their daughter, Sansa. That I got the impression that she was a little developmentally delayed. Is that what was going on?
right.
Cute. Oh my gosh, adorable. But I could, just watching them struggle to be parents of a child who is sick. My other kid, he dealt with some other things, and as a parent, you feel absolutely helpless. It is just like, my kid is in pain. I don't know how to help them.
Sure.
And watching that, I was just like, oh my gosh, and then they took, not only were they a parent, they chose to have somebody who was um that they knew going in had already struggled, and just watching how they sacrificed for everybody, and the quote that, family is who you choose.
Hmm.
That choice, that was really very profound. My sister adopted 3 boys, and you know they're just my nephews. That
Yeah.
it's just their family. They can't get rid of me. I'm the favorite aunt. you know
Place.
but at the same time, it's still uh for them, they've had their own struggles,
Mhm.
because their mom did drugs and stuff. So
So with Sansa, I mean, I just think that it goes to this theme within the film of choosing family, but really thematically who the Richards are, who Nikki and Elise are, in adopting Sansa, knowing that she had leukemia. She was in remission and doing well, but they went to Hungary for a month and lived with her, and that's how it worked over there. They needed to be there for a month and fell in love with her and were willing. They knew because of Elisa's health insurance in Baltimore, they're at Hopkins, that they were like, we can give this girl a home, and we know that she's our daughter. And I just think that's amazing because in all actuality, she has a sibling that was adopted before her, and they were going to adopt Sansa as well, and when they found out she had leukemia, they backed out. And so I do think, things work out how they're meant to. And I think that Sansa is in such a loving home and is in incredible hands. But that speaks to the fact that not everyone out in the world like does want to take on those challenges and does want to choose a more taxing or difficult route. And something that I think's interesting about what I chose to do in following them as a filmmaker is I had a couple of critiques, like more constructive criticism early on that, well, you're filming a family where the story's already happened because she was in remission. And I just believed that it was so interesting that life after remission doesn't mean that the challenges have gone away. And that's what you actually see on a lot of movies. You do see the person going through chemo or the person going through their treatment, and then they are in remission and there's a happy ending. And to me, I always wonder, what was their life like after that? And so for Sansa, she's in physical therapy, she's in occupational therapy. It took 3 consecutive years for her to try to start elementary school. In the film, she's 6. She just turned 9. And she is starting 3rd grade, which is incredible. And but she needs people with her, thinking about Sansa, and the film didn't follow this, but she's a year of COVID learning, and that kid does not like to sit still. So I think the challenges for Sansa are going to last for the majority of her life. but the fact that, you know, she had another relapse after the film ended, but now she's back in remission. She's just one of the strongest humans I've ever had the privilege of meeting, for sure. She's so vibrant. The way you see her in the documentary and the film, you know, she dictated how I was going to shoot the film. She dictated, like, because I had to be handheld. I had all these bourgeois plans of cinematography and my cinematographic technique and things like that. And um, you know, she really I feel like meeting her kind of changed my life forever, to be honest. She's just such a wonderful soul.
That's awesome. You know, my sister adopted 3 boys. They were all brothers. And the younger 2 are twins. And one of them, he has some real challenges. Their mom was on drugs, and both of them, all 3 of them were drug babies, you know, and one of them in particular is really, really struggling. And it you know, my sister still adopted them. You know, she knew that they were going to have challenges. You know, now they're my nephews and they're awesome and I love them and they're well, one of them's taller, definitely taller than me. The other 2 are right close. Not that that's hard, but they think it's pretty cool that they're almost
It
taller
is
than me.
wild. My 13-year-old niece is taller than me, and I just like,
You're
you
like,
know, you always look at them like they're like 2 feet tall, and your just mind gets blown that they grow
exactly.
up.
Exactly, exactly. Wow, that's just amazing. I was wondering, you know, you talk about how she's 9 now. Have you kept in contact with them since you filmed?
Oh,
And have they seen it? What did they think of the film?
yeah, absolutely. So that is one thing that, you know, I think there are all different types of filmmakers in the world. And I think sometimes you're commissioned to film something. And so you're just in someone's life and then out of their life or what have you. But I don't think that's the type of filmmaking that I ever would like to subscribe to. I really invest myself in everything that I do, and I invest myself in the relationships that I make. And a filmmaker that really spoke to me at BCFA was Jeff Malmberg, who did Marwin Call, and you know, he said something to VCFA when he was there about how he promised his participant's mother on like her deathbed that he would be there for his participant for the rest of his life, and kept in touch with him. And I was still really early on in filming at that point, but I knew that that meant something to me, and that like Nikki and Elise are in my life for the rest of my life. And because when you have over 300 hours of footage, when you spend 6 months editing, I think about them every day. And they also live in my hometown too, so it's not like I travel to like a different country and out of sight, out of mind. It's like, you know, I will pass them. I've run into Nikki at Target recently with Sansa, you know, so I do stay in touch with them. They are, you know, COVID was really hard on them. Sansa had another relapse during that period of time. But the biggest focus right now is just on, you know, trying to keep her in remission, to keep some sense of normalcy. And they're so excited to get her back in person for school. Um, and she has only seen well, actually, no, so she hadn't seen the film. Sansa hadn't seen the film. And then when I screened at the Maryland Film Festival, I had a live Q&A after the fact. And that day Sansa actually spiked a fever, and Elise texted me that they were on their way to the ER. And it was such a crazy weird parallel as a filmmaker to be celebrating something that you know, an achievement that I've done around my entire Maryland community, which is largely one of the biggest steps in my career, while knowing my participant family is at the ER going through their very real life. It was like I don't know that I'll ever forget that feeling, because I was doing this Q&A, and yes, it was still great and exciting, but the whole time I was just like texting Elise saying like, how are we doing? What's going on? And to distract Sansa, they ended up watching everything at the hospital. And so they watched the Q&A and they watched the film, so Sansa got to see everything then. And I just took a collective moment to ask everyone to, like, if they pray, to pray for her, to send her love or light or energy. And I say all that to say, like, I feel deeply connected to this family. And more than anything, my goal was to never extract their story from them, but to share their story. And that their trust meant more to me than maybe the quality of light one day or the quality of sound, or I was a one woman band for the entire production of the film aside from a couple of interviews towards the end, and that was because I cared deeply about building a relationship based on trust with them. And I think that they can shout out something different, but I feel like we're friends for life now, and it's nice to be able to put the camera down and just build a friendship, because we're the same age. I mean, we're in some of the same communities, and it's really cool to now just be friends.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What did what is it I'm trying to ask? How have Nick, because I in the film, because Sansa's illness had really kind of taken over their lives, Elise had felt really overwhelmed with having to be the primary um breadwinner, taking over, also worrying about not only Sansa but Nikki, and then Nikki's transition, and the strain that that put on their marriage. Obviously, they're still together. Did how have they come? How far have they come now since that?
So yeah, so shocking news. The pandemic was really hard on them, and they're actually in a separation right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But you know what though, like because I've been doing a lot of these Q and A's, and sometimes it gets brought up and sometimes it doesn't. And I have met with them both extensively about they're comfortable with me sharing and not sharing, because what I think I would love to say, and what I would love for all of your viewers to understand, is that when a documentarian films very real lives, we freeze that period of time in their life for eternity. So Sansa was 6, Sansa's now 9. 3 years have happened in that period of time. And so everyone's impressions of the work and the very real love and the very real struggle and everything they've gone through existed. And that was like the number one most important thing I got out of Nikki and Elise after they watched the film was like, do you feel like this was an accurate representation of your life? And they agreed. But we all keep growing, and we are constantly on this path of becoming who we are going to be next. And so I do think that it's really important for people to understand that they practiced radical love and radical communication throughout this film. But Elise had suppressed so much of her own emotions and processing of the transition, and of not even specifically the transition, like largely, um I'm trying to form my words carefully because it's not my marriage and I'm being as respectful as I can. I do not want people out there going, oh, well, Elise just isn't into trans people. People need to understand they've been together they were married for 10 years. They were each other's first partners. Think about your first relationship and how different you are as a person from your first relationship. This doesn't have anything to do with sexuality. This is everything to do with people growing in different ways. And so I really deeply respect them. I think that they are perpetually on this path of becoming, and that they are becoming truer versions of themselves every day. They're both incredible parents still. They're putting Sansa first and foremost. They're in constant communication with one another, which I think therapy was an incredible testament to how long they stayed together and how they're acting with each other now in their separation. They are two of the most mature, healthy minded individuals in what they're doing and how they're processing what they're doing. But I do think that this next stage is leading them in separate directions.
And that is a legitimate thing. I've been divorced for now 16 years, 15 years, 15. Oh my gosh, it's been a while.
So,
But I was actually thinking about that this morning. It's like, okay, so when I got married, I was 22 and
hmm.
I was married for 10 years, and I grew so much, and then we just there's a lot of other things that happen. That's not the place. But, I know how much I changed in my marriage,
Yeah.
and then I also know how much I've changed since my divorce. And, I've been on this path. But then COVID and my accident happened, and I'm now not sure what path I'm on.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how things happen in our lives that make us go, oh, is that what I really wanted? And reevaluate what we want in life and stuff. And, last year I had fully planned on moving to LA. I thought that's where I was going to go. And then I literally was in California, in LA in February. I came back. I was going to be moving later in the year. In March, the country shut down. I was like, okay, well, that's obviously not happening. And then in June was my accident. And so over this last year, I've like, okay, what is it? Where am I going? What am I doing? And I have, I've been working on my channel. I've really discovered that I love doing these filmmaker interviews and stuff. And so it's been, that journey is like, okay, what's next? So I totally understand their struggle. COVID has changed so many lives,
Yeah. And
whether or
I,
not they were actually in, they got sick or not.
mhm. Yeah,
So,
and a big motivation for me making this film initially was because statistically, when a partner comes out as trans, especially a male to female transition, typically the spouse fails. And I definitely, I felt a bit of anxiety of even sharing their separation with people, but I want to be really true to who they are and their evolution. And I just think that it's important that I have a fear that people look at Elise as a person that failed. And I really just think it's important to say that that's not the case, and that I think both of them have done so much work internally on who they are, externally on what they want. And I actually think it's something to celebrate that they are just moving towards really beautiful, authentic growth. And sometimes that just doesn't happen together. And so if there are people out there that have watched this film that are in a committed relationship and are navigating their transition, I think the lessons that you can learn from Nikki and Elise with the radical communication, going to couples therapy, and being with one another are still very valid life lessons that you can take away from the film.
yeah, that's awesome. So, now are people able to watch this yet, or is it still in the festival circuit?
It's going to be in the festival circuit through the end of the year. And then I'm kind of auditioning video on demand, like which avenue I'd like to go, and seeing what's out there. Distributors can hit me up. But for now, we've been doing quite well on the festival circuit. It's been weird because it's still all been virtual, but I just got accepted into Middlebury New Filmmakers Festival in Vermont, and it's going to be fully in person, and I
Oh
think
wow.
I'll be able to go. So I cannot wait to just like look at people looking at the screen, because I think there are moments in the film where Sans is just so funny, and the things we're talking about, while it's incredibly important to talk about the severity of loss through transition and things like that, like I was also attracted to this family because they have so much love and light and energy and humor in their lives. So I can't wait to hear, hopefully, people laugh at Sansa, and I can't wait to just be able to continue these types of conversations in the flesh.
That's awesome. Well, you'll have to keep me posted when people can watch it. So
Yeah,
tell me about your new project that
sure.
kind of you said landed in your lap all of a sudden.
Yeah. Oh, this is my first time talking about this. So this is very fun, because it's very like happening right now. And, for people out there listening that are very steeped in narrative, you write and you storyboard and you shot list and you do all the things. And in the perfect world, documentary would work that way too.
It's not how it
Historic,
works.
yeah, like historic documentaries can work that way. But I really like intimate portrait films. And so when a life is happening and events are happening, you just have to pick up your camera and go. So I am, let's see, my background with this new story that I'm doing, it's called Our Time Kitchen film, the Our Time Kitchen, and it's about two incredible Baltimore chefs, Chef Kat Smith or Katina Smith and Chef Kaya Givian, and they are coming together to create a safe space commercial shared kitchen that will be a safe space for specifically BIPOC females and marginalized genders to be able to start their own culinary endeavors and their own businesses. And so they have 6 months, they're racing the clock to raise $100,000. They bought this 3-story building in Baltimore City at auction, and they need to turn it into a shared commercial kitchen where chefs can come in and do pop-ups and have meetings and business meetings to start their businesses and do prep work. And then the top floor is going to be for marginalized genders and BIPOC business owners like tattoo artists or hairdressers to be able to rent spaces. And their model is going to be incredibly equitable, that you can do an hourly rental, which is kind of currently unheard of in the shared commercial kitchen space, to be able to meet people where they're at and help elevate and let them be able to be empowered and start their own culinary endeavors. So
That is
I was going to either go
fantastic.
to I was going to go to film school when I was 18, or I was going to go to culinary school. And I have been passionate about food and agriculture and the community that surrounds food. I was a server and a bartender, and I used to get in trouble when I was a little kid because I'd stay up till midnight watching like Emeril Lagasse reruns when he was one of the first live cooking shows on Food Network.
Uh-huh.
So I watch all. I mean, I'm a huge, I'm a huge fan of like street food and chef's table and all of the food shows that are on Netflix. So I feel like as a filmmaker I've been building to this moment. It's a story largely about feminism and food and racial equity and social justice, so it is everything that lights me up.
That is so cool. That is
Yeah.
so cool. Well, I remember one of the first things I remember about meeting you was you were talking about your love of beer.
Yeah, that still exists, that's true. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super excited for, what you've got going on and the stories that you're going to be telling. I suspect that you're going to be telling a lot of stories over the next years, and I can't wait to watch. And I'm hopefully that you'll be able to come back and tell me about your new stuff. That would be very exciting for me.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
love it. Can I plug two quick
oh,
things?
absolutely, absolutely.
So if you follow the story, you can find me and Mom and M at jenaburchik.com,
Oh,
and
yes.
Nikki, who is writing a novel throughout the film called Demon in the Whitelands. That book, it's a YA queer dystopian novel. And
Ooh,
if
very
you like
cool.
Game of Thrones or you like any of that fantasy fiction, her book is on sale on Amazon and loads of other places. So I just want to navigate people in that direction. And then
Yes.
if you're interested in activism and culinary endeavors, Our Time Kitchen, you can follow them on Instagram and donate to their cause of trying to open up this safe space commercial kitchen. So
And I'll make
I,
sure to include all of those links in the video below.
thank
So,
you. Yeah, I'm happy for people to follow my work, but I really would rather you go out and support these incredible participants that I've had the privilege of knowing. Tammy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
so I hope everyone enjoyed this look into my world with my friend Jenna. When she has a link, I will make sure to share that to all my viewers. And thank you so much. And I will see you next time when we take a look in my world.